In tutorial 18, we'll go ahead and take the block break. This is going to look at both types we had. We had one that was a geometry break, and then we had one that was a particle break. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at not necessarily the break block pieces, these two. We already have these defined, and if you don't have them defined, go ahead and just like for instance this one, this will be the particle, so we'll have the block state, it'll be the block breakable. The block state after won't be relevant just because once it breaks it'll be gone. But then the blocks, the break state, you'll be able to choose your particle or your geometry. So we have both inside the scene, particle and geometry. Inside of the project tab, up in the prefabs here, we have our two types. Up at the very top, we've got the block breakable geometry. If you just drag this into the scene, and you can drag the particle into the scene as well, you'll notice that both of these, for instance in the game view, you can see it here, is that this one creates the particle effect with the material kind of looking like part of the breakable piece from this. It also has a sound file as well, so when it plays for the first time, it'll actually make that sound of the breaking, and then it'll start to fall down. Alright, so let's go ahead. We don't have to really worry about this one as much as we need to start taking a look at this one over here. So let's go ahead and we'll delete this one out. If you click on this one, this is going to be inside your hierarchy. You'll have the prefab block breakable geometry, and the breakable geometry, it has 5 different cubes showing just the different parts and pieces of it. And this was what we instantiate when the character hits his head onto this one, instantiates this, and breaks down. Alright, so at the very top right here, we have our block breakables. Let's go ahead and check this one to activate it. And on the script file, let's go ahead and just double click to open it up. This is going to open up our block breakables over here. And what we want to do is just create a couple of simple things with it. We want to be able to set up a sound file so that it plays when it gets hit, and then an optional breakable kind of a wait time and a force so that it can kind of go up a little bit higher and then go down a little bit at defined speeds. Alright, so getting started with this one. Let's go ahead and just label this here. We'll say breakables component. And we'll do our typical place in your name for it, and or your website address, whatever you'd like to do for these. And for the basic description of it, we're just simply going to say that it adds a force upward, and it also plays a sound. Alright. And if we're going to provide instructions for it, we can just say that it's going to, you basically want to add an audio file, in inspector for break sound. Alright, so getting started with this one. The parts and pieces, we have a rigid body assigned to each one of the parts and pieces, so what we want to do is actually use the rigid body option, which means we can use the add force for it. So we'll go ahead and just get rid of our update function. We'll use the fixed update function for it. Getting started, let's type in 2 variable types. We want one which is going to be our breakable time, and we'll just set it to a float. We'll do about a 2.5 for our wait time that we'll use it for. And we'll do another variable, and this variable we'll just call it I think we had a bump break, so we'll just call it sound bump break. Alright, and this is going to be our audio clip. So the 2 variables we use are going to be those. This will also be available inside the inspector, so you can change how long the breakable time is going to last, as well as you can provide different type of sound effects for when the bricks break. For our first one, in terms of functions, let's go ahead and define each function. We'll have our fixed update, and the fixed, if we can spell it here, the fixed update. Alright, be our first one. The next function that we'll want to define, we'll do one called breakable wait. So we'll say breakable wait, and this will just be the break wait function that we'll use. And then last one we'll do is just a start function, just to initialize some of our variables here, setting the audio clip file to it. Alright. So starting with the bottom two here, let's go ahead and just set these in. So very similar to our other audio files that we've done before. We'll load our clip file. So we'll say audio.clip is going to be equal to our sound bump break. And then we'll do the play. So we'll say audio play. We'll just call that function up. And that way, when it gets going, the first thing that happens is it'll set the right file and it'll play it when the character hits and it gets instantiated. Alright, so the breakable wait, let's go ahead and work on this one real quick. This is basically a wait statement, so let's go ahead and just do a yield. And we'll do a wait for seconds. And we'll use our breakable time that we were that we applied up there for the variable type. Alright, and then inside the fixed update, let's go ahead and add a rigid body here. Since we actually have rigid body as one of the components, we'll just grab it, so we'll say rigid body, and we'll do an add force. And the add force, we'll just do a vector 3 up. That way we have the direction that is actually going to be moving. So say vector 3 dot up. And let's go ahead and just multiply that. We'll put in a variable a little bit higher than it probably needs to be, but we'll do about 250. It'll be such a short spurt, though, that it may not have to, it doesn't matter if it goes up too high or not, because it'll be going back down in a second. So we're starting off with a positive number, forcing it upward. We'll call up our breakable wait function right here. And the breakable wait function has no arguments in it, so we'll just assign it to that. That's going to be again, this is just going to be saying that for 2.5 on the seconds, it'll go up before it starts to force down. And then we'll do another rigid body here. Alright, and for this rigid body, oops, make sure we actually spell these right. There'll be lowercase on these. There we go. So for this rigid body, let's add another force again. And this time we'll do this one on the, we'll go ahead and say the vector 3 up, but for the direction, let's multiply it by a negative number, so we'll say negative about 200. Alright. And then once it starts to go back down, let's go ahead and just do a destroy on this object itself. And when we destroy it, we're actually going to set two parameters for this one, two arguments. Is that we can do the object we want to destroy, and we can do a time for it. So we'll say, we can either say this game object, or we can say just game object, either way. So if we were to say this dot game object, and then the time, we'll go ahead and use our time that we have here, which is breakable time. So we'll say breakable time, and with breakable time, that'll give us the time frame for how long these blocks will fall. You might want to make sure that, like for the breaking, that if it was way up high up here, that it definitely fell and was off screen before it disappeared. Alright, so if we have those, that'll give us pretty much all we need for all of those. Let's go ahead and do a quick set of commenting here. Alright, so this will be time for our object before destroying, so time for object before destroying. And we have our audio file. This is just going to be for the break sound. And the fix update, this is going to be for our rigid body. Then for each of these, we're just simply adding a force, and we're adding the force to the object itself on an upward direction. And we'll have time to wait before force. And then we add another force here. And then finally we'll just delete the object, and it'll be based on the breakable time. Alright, here we just have our break wait function. So we're just giving some simple names to these just so we have some comments on it. We'll wait in seconds based on breakable time. And we'll just do this initialize. And this will just simply be preloading an audio clip. And we only have one breakable sound. If you want to make a couple of different ones and randomize between them, you'd also load them up. You could load up multiple here. You could do an array of sound clips as well. And here we'll just do the play audio file for breaking. There we go. Alright, so we'll save this. And if we go back into Unity, the block itself, this is part of is part of a prefab, so we'll go ahead and assign the variables. Let's go ahead and go up to our audio. Inside of audio, we have Mario break block bump right here. Let's go ahead and just drag this onto the sound bump break. And then the breakable time's already defined here, so if it works for us, then we'll just leave it as is. In order to make sure, though, so like from the moment when I drag this into the scene, I'm changing just this object. If I want to make sure that all my prefabs are updated for the breakable, so that when this is instantiated as breakable, it actually pulls up the right one. Be sure that you click apply. If I click apply, notice that the bold text goes to just normal text, and letting me know this is actually going to be across the board for this prefab. So if I go ahead and just delete this one, we can go in here and play. And we go over here and we hit this one. You'll notice that now it went up just a little bit. It broke with a sound. I don't know if you hear the sound or not, but it'll break with a sound, and it'll have the geometry set for it. And then also it destroyed it once it got to the bottom. And same thing for this one. It breaks and it goes down. Alright, so that's going to be just a little bit of the scripting that we have to do for our breakable for the geometry part to work for us. And now we've got both breakables working, and the prefab it's instantiating, both of those work for particle and geometry.